Welcome back to Sailing El Jaleo. This week we continue working on El Jaleo's hull to get her ready to go back in the water. We work on her bottom paint and the boot top. We're only about 10 days away from going back in the water and about 3 weeks away from leaving, so we've got a lot of work to do in a little bit of time. Hey y'all! Last week we began prep on El Jaleo's hull to get her ready to go back in the water. We did a really good once over on the hull with a stiff brush and we got all of the mud and barnacles off, and I gave it a once over with a stiff scraper to get any loose areas of the paint removed. I started this week by wet sanding the boot top. There was some peeling going on the boot top, and sorry for the dogs playing in the background, but so there was some peeling that was going on the boot top. You could see where the cream of the gel coat was showing through the red of the boot top, so there had been a lot of flaking of the paint, and I wanted to remove all of the loose material, so I wet sanded the entire boot top. And if you're doing this, I would recommend, if you're doing it by hand, to either pay attention to how you fold the sandpaper or to wear gloves, because I did not do those things, and while I was sanding off the boot top, I actually sanded off some of my fingernails too, so that was awesome. When I got the entire boot top sanded, I went back over the ablative bottom paint with a knife, and on the big areas where I had scraped with the scraper and there was loose paint, I went around the edges to make sure that the paint was secure. When I was wet sanding the boot top, I was spraying water on the boot top and on the sandpaper at the same time, and some water had run down the sides of the hull, and there was one spot where it was actually retaining moisture on the starboard side. It was drying everywhere else very quickly, but there was one spot that was perpetually wet, so I knew there had to be a problem there. So I got down and I inspected the area pretty well, and there were some very fine cracks all throughout a large area of the ablative paint. And water was actually able to get behind the paint, so I knew we had a big problem there. So I spent quite a bit of time on that area and took out a huge chunk of the paint that had spider webbed and was loose, but I wanted to get that cleaned up so we had nice, good adhesion on our new bottom coat. After I got that large area cleaned up, I continued all the way around the hull, inspecting every scraping all around the edges to make sure the paint was secure that was remaining, and I checked for any other spider webbed areas, and I got all of the rest of the loose paint off of the hull. There were a few spots of dirt that I missed on the port side, so I went ahead and took care of them as well. While I was waiting for the gallon of bottom paint that I had ordered to arrive, I did have a quart of the bottom paint left over from last year when Matt and I painted the bottom, so I went through and hit all of the spots that had been scraped down to the blue base coat. I coated all of those areas with one coat of the ablative bottom paint. You may be wondering, where did all the blue spots go? I actually wasn't even going to show this step. The first coat I had put on a couple of days previous, and I was just going to show the entire bottom being painted for the final coat, but I had ordered the paint a week earlier and it still had not arrived, so I had a half a quart left of the bottom paint from last year. So I thought, you know, those those spots were scraped all the way down to the base coat, so I thought, why not put on a second coat? So I had the paint. I went ahead and put a second coat on all of those repair areas. We did have a couple of rainy days this week, so I started working on the inside of El Jaleo a little bit. I started the water tank project. Just in case you guys don't know, El Jaleo does have two, I believe they're either 30 or 35 gallon fiberglass water tanks, and they're coated with a water potable epoxy, and the epoxy had started to peel. So I wanted to strip all of the old or the peeling epoxy out and get those recoated. And that's turning out to be quite a large project, bigger than I thought. And so I got a couple of days working in on that this week. I'm not going to show you any of that. I'd kind of like to keep these projects together all in one video if I can, even though I work on them at different times. So another development is I did go ahead and order an AIS unit for El Jaleo, so that I'm going to have to install that before I leave. And AIS, it's kind of a transponder system. Especially at night, my vision is not very good, and even with the way that lights are set up on a boat, you can kind of tell which direction they are heading. But I'm colorblind, so it's really hard for me. Like we were going down Chesapeake Bay, and Matt and I had a really hard time when tankers are coming at you, or cargo ships or something, and they move deceptively fast, and it can be really hard to tell which direction they're going. I know it sounds stupid, but at night when you're puttering along and it's coming at you, you don't know. I didn't know whether to turn to port or starboard to avoid it. So AIS is like a transponder system, and it shows all of the ships that have AIS it'll show it right on my navigation program, which way they're heading, what speed they're going, that kind of information. So I'll know exactly, looking at my program or my nav screen, I'll know exactly how to avoid those ships, which way to turn, and what speed changes to make. So that's going to be a massive help for me. It looks like it's not too bad to install, so hopefully I'll get that installed before I leave. And yeah, and Hanwi, today is Thursday when I'm recording this, the 8th. The video will go up tomorrow morning, and as the video goes live, I'll be dropping Hanwi off at the vet to get two of her retained baby teeth removed and to be spayed. So the crew is getting polished up. Everyone else is in good health. We've just got to finish up a few of these projects and we should be able to get underway. I'd like to give a massive shout out and thank you to our Patreon crew: Joan and Juddy Judnick, Val and Chris Alcorn, Denise and Eli Sackett, Joan and Jim Linbo, Sherry Erickson, Genesis Ava Linbo, and Deb Shaw. Thank you guys so much. You guys make these videos possible. Without you, I wouldn't be making these videos. So thank you so much. It really means a lot to me. If you are interested in becoming a member of our Patreon crew, there is a link in the description below, and it gives you access to our Patreon page. We've got bonus videos, bonus photos, content. I try and upload something every day when we're actually traveling. So if you're interested in that, I think it starts out at like $2 a month, so it's not crazy expensive or anything, but go ahead and click on that link. And if you do enjoy these videos, please go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe. It really, really helps us out. Alrighty, I hope everyone is doing great, and we'll see you next week.